Welcome back to Technical Talkout. And what a time to be a fan. Like, this is great. This is the best time, I think, in MMA history. We are experiencing a kind of renaissance of MMA. We are getting brand new batches of talent taking over divisions. We are getting promotions who go outside of the system to get us entertainment. The UFC and Fight Island. Like, that's ridiculous. That's crazy. You know, we are getting just like an output of cards that are just stacked with competitors. You know, we're seeing cards that are going to determine either the championship or the top contenders. And that's what we're going to talk about because we just have so much MMA that it's almost hard not to talk about. And MMA, the UFC specifically, was the first sport back. They said it. They said they would be. They've been this whole time. We're just now getting other sports as it's July 21st, 2020. We're getting a bunch of new sports, and they're coming back, and that's fine. There's still negotiations on how things are going to work. But, I mean, MMA has been doing it, the UFC specifically, and we've been blessed with all kinds of cards. I mean, just recently in the past, Woodley Burns, which was a good, fun fight. It was good for Burns. It was not a great fight for Woodley. But it's just been fantastic. The amount of cards we've had, let's see, since March. Now, I would say the UFC has been going at it since May 9th. Since May 9th, we've had 11 cards. Since May 9th, we've had 11 cards, a handful of pay-per-views, but that's just ridiculous. And the headliners on those cards and the cards in general, like we had Dustin Poirier versus Dan Hooker, which was just a slugfest. And that was an awesome fight. And that's a fight that could have been a co-main event on a pay-per-view. We've had a lot of really good fights. Like, again, Woodley Burns. We had Glover Teixeira versus Anthony Lionheart Smith. Like, UFC 249, which was the first one back. We had Tony Ferguson versus Justin Gaethje. Like, these are ridiculous cards on top of the undercards on them. Like, the main card and the undercard, everything has been great. It is just a phenomenal time to be a fan, and I can't be more excited. And if we're just going to go ahead and, we're only going to go over a few of the cards. I'm going to start with UFC 249, which was Justin Gaethje and Tony Ferguson. Let's start with the prelims, right? Not the early prelims. Bryce Mitchell, though. Bryce Mitchell is just fantastic. He is somebody to really watch out for in 130 or 145. He is a monster. But if we're going here, we can start with, Carla Esparza beat Michelle Waterson with a decision. That was a pretty good fight, but Pettis Cerrone was an awesome fight, and personally, I thought Cerrone won, but that could just be my bias. But I thought Cerrone had that fight. But again, I couldn't be mad at the decision because it was so close, and they were both doing everything they could to win and look for finishes, and neither of them were like riding. They were there to fight, and it was great and good for Pettis. That was awesome. Kind of heartbroken that Cerrone didn't take that one, but because that's, I think, 3 losses in a row. That's Ferguson. That's 4, I think, because that's got to be Gaethje. That's Ferguson. That's Conor, and now this. And 4 losses in a row that you don't know, even though those were to guys that are all either fighting for the title or have had the title. It's like they're extremely tough fights. There's no doubt about it. So I don't know how to feel about it. I personally feel like Cerrone could keep doing it if he wants to keep doing it. He's dangerous. I feel like he's got the skills to beat anyone in the division. It's just he just sometimes doesn't. And like this time it was a decision. And there were a few times where I was just amazed. Like Pettis took a head kick almost clean from Cerrone, and that normally puts dudes out. But if we go to the main card, Calvin Kattar and Jeremy Stevens. God, those guys throw heat. I knew that fight was not going to go the distance. There's no way. Someone was getting knocked out. And it was Jeremy Stevens. Calvin Kattar just caught him with a beautiful elbow and just demonstrated how good he really is. Like there's a lot to be said about that guy, but I really, really like Calvin Kattar. I think he's going to go far in this division, and he's going to be a future champ. Like that's a really exciting fighter right there. And he brings it, and he is just so technically sound. Like everywhere, we haven't seen him weak yet. And his loss against Zabit, he looked like, and he was going to rally to win if that was a longer fight. Like he was looking like he was going to take Zabit's head off, but Zabit took away with it. And then we had Ngannou versus Jairzinho Rozenstruik. I mean, Rozenstruik called out Ngannou. I don't know why. I don't know why anyone would ever think it's a good idea to call out Ngannou, but he called him out and he got what he wanted. You know, that was a 20-second fight. Ngannou just blitzkrieged him and destroyed him, folded him, and it wasn't even like close. It was just another, like Ngannou could have fought later that night. Then we had Cejudo and Cruz. That one broke my heart too because I'm a big Cruz fan. I used to train at Alliance, so seeing him get stopped like that, I mean, he was saying he was on his way up and he was going for it, but that whole fight belonged to Henry Cejudo. Like Cruz landed a few good things, but Cejudo just owned that fight. The takedown, the leg kicks. I mean, then he caught him with that knee, and it was just Henry Cejudo really just kind of solidified that he is the cringe king, but he is also the king. He is the champ. You know, he's Olympic gold medalist. He's a 2-weight champ, and there's a reason for that. And I think he's going to come back. He said he retired, but I don't buy that. I think that's bullshit. I think he's going to come back. I think he is going to wait for the big money fights. He's too young and at too high of. He's at the top. I think I can't say his name right. Ali from Dominance MMA, Ali Abdelaziz. He's going to get Henry Cejudo a fantastic fight at the right money, and I think that's what they're waiting for. Cejudo is just tired of being the cringe king for pennies. You know, if he's going to go out there and be the cringe king, he's going to do it for some big money. And then we had Gaethje Ferguson, which was just, I was on the edge of my seat the entire time. It was like, I didn't know what could have happened. Either of them could have knocked each other out, or we could have seen Gaethje get subbed by Tony Ferguson. Like that was a very real possibility. I don't recall very many takedown attempts in that fight. I mean, I think I saw Tony Ferguson go for an Imanari, and at the behest of, or at the instruction of Eddie Bravo saying, maybe go for an Imanari, maybe try an Imanari. It's like, his corner did not do him any favors that night, but Gaethje's did. Trevor Whitman kept Gaethje focused. He reminded him, like, hey, what was, when you got, too relaxed last time, what happened? You got stopped twice. So he made Gaethje say that. I said, look, I got stopped twice. So he kept his head in the game, and I think that's what won him the fight. Is he stayed patient, he stayed disciplined. He wasn't gassing himself out going for these bombs, but he was still landing big shots and leg kicks that just tore Tony's leg up. Like, Tony did not do it. It was not a fight. It was not his fight. I think in a rematch, it could look different. I don't know if it will, but I don't see Gaethje owning Ferguson. He won that night. And if we're going to move on to another card, we can start with, let's go to, on June, Poirier versus Hooker. That was a good fight. An okay card, but that fight was just stellar. Like, god damn, that was probably one of the best MMA fights I've ever seen. It was great. But the co-main event was Mike Perry, Mickey Gall. Mike Perry just dominated Mickey Gall, surprisingly, in all areas. I thought if Mickey Gall was going to have somewhere where he was going to surprise Mike Perry and kind of, possibly catch a win, it would be on the ground. But Mike Perry mounted him. Mike Perry owned him. Like, that was... And Mike Perry only had his girlfriend or wife. Forgive me, Mike, if I'm getting it wrong, but he only had her in the corner. That guy is just a born fighter. Like, he just got after it. And Mickey Gall couldn't handle him. Mike Perry was too much of a Mack truck that night. He just steamrolled right over him for a decision. But you had Poirier and Hooker. I didn't think Dan Hooker beat Paul Felder. I thought Felder won that fight. Again, one of those fights that I couldn't be mad at the decision. It's just not what I thought happened. I thought Paul Felder won that fight, so undeservingly, I thought Poirier and Hooker should not have happened. I thought Poirier should be fighting somebody else. Dan Hooker should not be getting the shot at Poirier, but there it goes. And that fight lived up to the hype, and both guys completely, obviously, I've always been high on Dustin Poirier, but, Dan Hooker really solidified the fact that he is a top 5 lightweight for sure. Like there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. He can stand with anyone in that division. And he and Poirier just went back and forth. And there were times where I thought Poirier got cracked, and I was like, "Uh-oh, he's gonna get stopped." But he came back and they just stood in a telephone booth and traded. But you can tell the shots that Poirier had much more power behind them. He hits harder than Hooker did. So at the end of the fight, like towards the end, I don't know if it was from exhaustion or from all the punishment, but Dan Hooker could not keep up with Poirier's pace. He got he got quite a few takedowns on Poirier, which I'm surprised at, and he got out of a lot of guillotine attempts, which looked a few of them looked really tight. But Dan Hooker fought and he got out, and I thought Poirier was going to finish him. I thought it was going to be an easier fight for Poirier, but it really wasn't. I mean, those guys were trading, but Poirier has some power, and we've always known that. We've seen it. He knocked Gaethje out. Like it was just Poirier is a monster on the feet, and his boxing is so good. And that's what I think won him the fight against Dan Hooker. Dan Hooker got all the takedowns on him. I don't think Poirier got him down once. And I thought Poirier would have a better advantage on the ground, even if off of his back he would be able to fight more. And he was going for some attacks off of his back, and he was staying busy, and he was fighting the wrists. But Dan Hooker still maintained the dominant position on top. That was just a awesome fight. Thank you, Dana White. You've been giving us some awesome cards. And we just had the BMF, the baddest motherfucker, Jorge Masvidal, fight Kamaru Usman for the title. And on less than a week's notice, 6 days notice, he came in, he flew in and had some pizza, made weight, passed all the tests, and he fought, and he lost a decision, but he came to fight. You could tell he was slowing down. He didn't have, the necessary training that you would take Kamaru Usman on at a 5-round title fight. I mean, Kamaru had been preparing for somebody else, and he didn't care who was in front of him, even if it was his former training partner or current training partner, Gilbert Burns. He didn't care who was in front of him. He came in extremely good shape, as he always is. He never gets tired, ever. And credit to Masvidal's wrestling defense. I mean, goddamn, he fought off so many takedowns, and there were quite a few times where Kamaru just could not get him down, and that's a testament to how good Jorge Masvidal is. And if you get him down, he can get up. He's really good at that, and he's just a phenomenal fighter. I'd like to see this fight at a full training camp for both of them, but, Jorge's looking for the big money fights, and I'm glad he got paid. And then another, I think, Max Holloway won the fight against Volkanovski in their rematch. I thought Max Holloway might have done enough to keep the belt the first time they fought, but this time I for sure thought he had won the belt back. I didn't think Volkanovski did enough. I mean, he got the takedown late in the final round, I think it was, and I think Max won the belt back, but he didn't. And I'm not the only one that thinks that. I'm pretty sure Dana thinks that. A lot of the fight media thinks it. A lot of fighters. No knock on Volkanovski. He's a monster, and he's absolutely deserving of holding that belt. I just thought it should have been Max's night, But that's what the problem with judging, and never leave it to the judges. And then you had Peter Yan. Oh, my God. Peter Yan is just a striking phenomenon. He's so good, and the way he did it to Jose Aldo. It was a good first fight. It was a good first part of the fight, but he just took over, and he stopped him. And he's just that good. I mean, he knocked out Uriah Faber. Now he's a champion. We don't know who he's got next. I mean, the 135 division's hot. Cruz is coming off of a loss. Garbrandt coming off of that nasty knockout of Rafael Sunsao, which was just an extreme highlight in itself. You have Aljamain Sterling. You have a lot of really good talent, and then you have guys like Corey Sandhagen who are working their way up. It's 135 is great. You're gonna have Bryce Mitchell in a fight or two, looking at contendership or contention. It's just been phenomenal. Jessica Andrade and Rose Namajunas. Rose won that fight as she should have. She was on her, like, when she got knocked out by Andrade the first time, it was just a complete kind of, not domination, but it was Rose's fight. The striking, she was on point. Like, she was just better everywhere, but Andrade just picked her up and slammed her on her head. That's literally what happened. That's how she won the fight. There was no technique. It was just strength. That's not knocking on Andrade. I mean, but Namajunas was the better fighter, and she proved it this time around. She took a lot of big hits and really like took some punishment, but at the same time, she proved why she's such a good fighter. And now I think she's getting the fight against Zhang Weili or Weili Zhang, and we're gonna see a good fight there. I mean, when Joanna and her fought, or Joanna and Weili, god damn, that was another good close fight. But you knew that it was gonna be like fireworks, and Weili Zhang took it, which I thought she deserved the win. I thought she won. She landed the much bigger shots based just off of looks. I mean, Joanna had that bump on her head the size of Texas. It was just a much better fight for Weili Zhang than it was for Joanna that night. So, but we are getting some good cards coming up too. I mean, and just recently, outside of the pay-per-views, we had Calvin Kattar and Dan Ige, which is a good fight. Kattar, I think, won the fight by decision, but I thought he was going to knock Dan Ige out. We had Figueiredo versus Benavidez, which, my God, he looks so good, and Benavidez did not look good at all. He couldn't get anything off. Like, he just exposed how easily he gets hit, like the way his guard is, and Figueiredo just popped him everywhere. Whenever he didn't throw a ton, he just knew when to throw, and he got him exactly where he needed to get him, and he got him exactly how he needed to get him. But Calvin Kattar, Dan Ige, that was a good fight. Yeah, I mean, the rest of the card wasn't necessarily for those looking at contention, but that card, I mean, Calvin Kattar, I think we see him and Max Holloway next. So, upcoming, let's see, what do we got coming up? Next fight we have is going to be Darren Till and Robert Whittaker, which I don't know why not many more people are talking about this fight. This is going to be an awesome fight. I mean, you have Darren Till, who's coming off of his win over Kelvin Gastelum, where he neutralized Kelvin in his game. Kelvin's a really good wrestler, and he throws heat, and he just knocks people out. And, Darren Till did a good job of staying at distance, popping him when he needed, and winning that fight as he should have. But the rest of the card, I mean, Robert Whittaker is coming off of that loss from Israel Adesanya. I mean, that was a tough loss, and it was a big knockout. But Robert Whittaker, he didn't look terrible in that fight. I mean, he just got outclassed. It just showed you how good Israel Adesanya is. And then we have Shogun Rogerio 2, or is this 3? I'm not sure which one it is, but that's going to be a good fight, but neither of those guys are in for contention. You have Gustafsson and Verdum, which Gustafsson could lead himself to a heavyweight win or a heavyweight title shot. The division isn't that strong compared to the others. Like 35, 45, 55, 70 are just extremely strong. Like any one of those guys in the top 10 could be fighting for the belt in the next, year or two, right? With the right win, anyone in the top 10 could be fighting for the belt. The rest of the division is 85. I don't think they'll be moving very much. 205, again, it's just not a strong division. There's not a lot of excitement. It's the same names, kind of just pitter-pattering all over the top 10, up and down a few spots. And same with heavyweight. We're going to get also next month, August 15th, we're getting Miocic Cormier 3, which the first fight was a crazy flash knockout. That was just an insane. Cormier clinched with him on the break. He got him with that perfect punch, knocked him out, done. That was also Stipe coming off of coming off of his win over Ngannou, where he took a lot of big hits. And I think that was only like a 6-month period in between. So he didn't, his brain didn't get that much rest in between those fights. And Ngannou really landed some bombs, but to Stipe's credit, he took him and he won the fight as he did. And then in their rematch, Stipe and DC was doing the same thing. It looked like the first fight, just DC was controlling where he wanted until Stipe just made a few adjustments, which were just, it changed the world for him. You know, and he decided to start going to the body with that left hook, and he landed it a few times, and DC was not blocking it. He just kept taking him, and he couldn't do it anymore. And then DC went to the head and knocked him out. And I thought, damn, he earned that. That was like the DC's win over Stipe was awesome, but it didn't really show how much better DC was than Stipe. Stipe's win just showed a lot more about Stipe than DC's win over Stipe did, if that makes sense. Stipe, like, he was more impressive in his win for the fact that he took adversity and he showed that he could make adjustments on the fly and find ways to win. It wasn't just like a flash knockout where you're like, oh, he's so much better than him. It was just more like, damn, Stipe stood there, you know, played the game and got better as the fight went on and found his way to win. Like, he didn't give up. He didn't just stick to a game plan that wasn't working. He said, okay, I'm going to start throwing this left to the body and see what happens. And he connected so many times, and DC just did not answer it. And that's what lost him the fight, you know? And I think Stipe's win was more impressive over DC than DC's win over Stipe. And the rest of that fight, we have Junior Dos Santos, and we have Jairzinho Rosenstruik. I can't say his name, I'm sorry. That's going to be a good fight. You know, Rosenstruik's 6, Junior's 5, and that goes back to me saying the division isn't that strong. When Junior Dos Santos has been up in the top of the division that long, you know, he's not going to beat Ngannou. He's not going to beat, he lost to Overeem. It's just like the guys in that top 10 just aren't moving, and there's no young, fresh blood that's kind of like exciting the division. But speaking of exciting, we have Sean O'Malley versus Marlon Vera. And Sean O'Malley is barely ranked 14th, but goddamn, he's coming in hot. Like that perfect, like he had that awesome knockout back in March. And then he had that beautiful knockout of Eddie Wineland recently. Just that straight right down the middle, just saw it and bam, got him. That's going to be a good one. We have Magomed Ankalaev and then Jan Kutalaba, and that's going to be a good one. You know, I think this is a rematch. The first one ended kind of controversially, and they're sending it back, and I think that's going to be a good fight. This whole fight, this card, I think is definitely buying worthy on pay-per-view. I'm not going to wait till the results come out and not care. I'm going to buy this one because it is good. It is worth it. But back to the original point of this episode, we as fight fans are living through the most awesome time to be a fight fan. We are getting so many fights and so many cards. It's hard to keep up. Just before the Benavidez fight, I was like, oh, that's right. We have a fight tomorrow when I saw the weigh-in pictures. Like, we're just getting so much, and it's awesome. And the UFC is putting it out, and they don't have to worry about renting giant arenas and the gate and all that. So they can afford to put it out. And then a lot of these free fights, like, they're so good. And a lot of the cards in the free fights are all good. And it's not just like, you know, you do have some where it's one good fight and the rest are, you know, up-and-comers you never heard of or looking to make their way. But it's just an amazing time to be a fight fan. There's so much out there and there's so much more coming. I'm excited. And I don't know about you guys, but I think that the best is yet to come. And then down the road, when we have the 155 championship coming back, we have right now Gaethje's the interim champ, but we have Khabib who's going to be coming back, and, you know, rest in peace to his father, and, you know, the Nurmagomedov family, you know, all the respect and love to them. But when he comes back, he's going to be a monster. And Dominance MMA, that management group, goddamn, like Ali is just running that thing great, and I'm sure he's making a lot of money off of them. And he's finding the right fights for these guys. He's promoting them correctly. And he's just the stable of fighters he has that are either, you know, top 3 or championship fighters. Like, that's just awesome. And then we don't know what stands next because Gaethje is the interim champ and then Khabib is obviously the champ. So they're going to fight, but they're on the same management team. So I don't know what they're going to look to do, if they're going to put a buffer fight, because I don't think Khabib's going to fight before the end of 2020. I think he's going to come back in 2021. So we'll have to see what happens. But as always, thanks for stopping by, and I hope you guys had a great time. Keep the MMA fight alive, and let's keep going. Technical Talk out, Combat Sports Podcast.